want to make really is this isn't new information. This is just something that's been on the NHS website for a long time, and it's based on empirical evidence. It's not come out of nowhere. There's
empirical evidence, that's a really good saying, yeah.
But there's not more trans women breastfeeding. Do you know how many trans women are actually breastfeeding in this country?
How many?
James?
2 or 3?
None. Isn't it none?
There's probably none.
So why are we having this discussion and people getting upset about it?
That's what I wanted to bring to the table here, because what's happening is there's a concerted effort to bring stories like this into the media, and it functions basically to frame trans identity, trans people as a problem for society, which we aren't. But the second dangerous thing...
Yeah, but it's your fault that your people like you are making it a problem.
No, I'm not making it a problem.
Yeah, of course you are, because you moan all the time. You sort of get into conversations. You go online. I've seen some of your online criticisms of me. Makes me laugh, I have to be honest. Well, but, James, you know, you carry on promoting this thing when nobody really cares.
It's called free speech, James.
No, it's not really, is it? Because you moan like mad about never being invited on the programme.
No, the reason I wanted to talk about it is because what it does, it diminishes women in the media as well. So
it doesn't diminish. What you mean, trans activists, you're admitting now, are diminishing women.
No, the story is. So what are the main complaints from women is, oh, trans people are always talked about. Trans women are always talking, we're always talking about them. But this story operates like that. It dehumanises women as well. So
it needs to be talked about, doesn't it? If the NHS are talking about it.
It doesn't need to be talked about at all. If you are going from a transition to one sex to another, you can do it perfectly well. I've got friends who've done it, and they live as the opposite sex to the one they were born to. They're absolutely nice.
I absolutely agree with that, but I didn't bring the trans issue to the table. Somebody else brought it to the table, and I'm trans, so I'm here to talk about it.
Yeah, but it might happen.
The reason...
it might happen, though, so that's why it's been talked about. I mean, do you think it should happen?
If people like you ignored it, because I'm not talking to trans activists...
There's no way I'm going to ignore organisations like the Policy Exchange pushing things like this into the media. People like Toby Young pushing negative stories about trans people into... There's nobody backing me. Nobody's paying me to be here.
Well, because you're not that important.
Frida Wallace, a passionate transgender activist, argues that transgender women deserve the same rights as cisgender women.
So what do we make, first of all, of what has happened today? Let's come to you first, Frida. I mean, so should Isla Adam be in a woman's prison?
Well, I just hope that the prison system is making the right choice here. I'm not qualified to make those kind of decisions. I'm more interested in why this story exists now, because we don't talk about rapists very often on the news. When rapists are convicted, it's not a big deal. It doesn't make the news. A lot of rapists don't even get convicted. The conviction rates are scarily low for rapists. But what we're seeing today is this mentioned every hour on the news. Now, the only reason it's being mentioned every hour on the news is because it's got the word trans attached to it. And I'm interested in the organisation that this lady represents, because she claims to be a feminist, but I can't see any feminism in anything she writes. All I can see is an obsession with trans women, and I'd like to put that to her, that why is she only interested in trans women? She was a feminist. She's really looking the wrong way on problems for women in this country.
Julie, are you transphobic, or are you a feminist, or are they mutually compatible? How would you describe yourself? How would you answer that?
Well, I think my concern is mainly for the women in prison who I have actually spoken to, who have actually had spent time in prison with a trans-identified man. And this was a few years ago, and after speaking to those women, I've been at the forefront of many protests against having any men within the female estate.
So, I mean, your stance on this is straight down the line that, if you have a penis, you should not be in a woman's safe space, whether that be a female prison, a changing room, a swimming pool changing room. Is that your take on this?
Most definitely, yes.
And why do you feel like that?
Well, especially for prisons, as I say, after speaking to female prisoners and what they went through within a prison sentence with a trans-identifying male, really shocked me. And that was that led me to read a wee bit more into this. And no man should be in any female spaces, especially female spaces that are there for women to recover from rape or domestic violence. They're there to recover from male violence, and there has to be male-free spaces for that, especially for their rehabilitation.
Frida, you can see that point, surely, that, there are some very vulnerable women, especially in prisons,
Yes.
who have been victims of male violence in particular. So they are going to be very, very uncomfortable with this situation.
Yes.
That doesn't make them transphobic.
Yeah, Dawn, I can totally appreciate that. There are very vulnerable women out there. I work with them all the time. I work for the LGBT Foundation in Manchester. We work with homeless women. We work with drug and alcohol dependent women. We work with women that are escaping domestic violence, and none of those women ever mention trans issues to me. What they mention is systemic misogyny, the kind of systemic misogyny that allows police officers to rape people. That's what they tell me. And this lady is looking the wrong way. Her organisation is called the Scottish Feminist Network, but the basic tenets of feminism are working to increase equality, human choice, eliminating gender stratification, ending sexual violence, promoting sexual freedom. This is regressive, what this lady stands for. Now, in prisons, there are definitely different rules about how safeguarding takes place. But in the public arena, I use women's spaces. I have cis women friends who support me. And I am safer when cis women respect me and they support me. This lady would be a threat to me in public.
Right. Julie, evidently you're a threat. How do you respond to that?
Yeah, someone who's never been convicted of any assault, crime or whatever. I'm a threat to you.
I've not been convicted of any assault or crime. But I've looked at your Twitter feed and I've seen the things you say.
Is the truth transphobic? Is the truth transphobic? The no men...
She highlights the NHS guidelines that support her stance, asserting that denying trans women the right to breastfeed is discriminatory.
These are some of the nurses who say they don't feel safe sharing changing rooms with a trans colleague.
It's degrading.
It feels humiliating.
Humiliating, yeah. Yeah, it's an open changing room. There aren't anywhere, there's nowhere to hide in there. We all have to get changed out in the open, so we're vulnerable.
One of the nurses, who wishes to be anonymous, has experienced sexual abuse and has PTSD. She says she finds having a trans woman in the changing room triggering. Others have objected on religious grounds.
We have Muslim women, we've got Christian women, and we've heard about women, wearing clothes underneath their uniform so that they don't have to actually get completely undressed in the changing room.
And to wear a vest and leggings under your uniform in the heat at the minute, it's just absolutely unacceptable.
Yeah.
26 nurses wrote a letter to their trust. A meeting then happened with their ward manager and HR.
She was kind of told that your staff need to be re-educated.
The situation has now escalated politically, with the Shadow Health Secretary Wes Streeting tweeting, "I support the nurses and I'm horrified that they've had to resort to legal action. We've got to find a better way through this, and I'd be happy to meet them. We've got to find a way through that treats trans people with respect and respects women's safe spaces." The Conservatives want to amend the Equality Act so that single-sex spaces like changing rooms can't be accessed by someone who's biologically male but identifies as a woman. Labour hasn't backed the plans, but Keir Starmer says he's committed to protecting single-sex spaces. But transgender activists say people should be able to access facilities according to their gender identity.
There's a path forward through those conversations to acceptance, because ultimately including transgender people isn't hurting anyone. What's hurting people is this fear that has been stirred up, and that's not just hurting transgender people, it's hurting everybody.
County Durham and Darlington NHS Foundation Trust say they are investigating the nurses' allegations but can't comment further because of the legal action. Women's rights and trans rights have been a heated topic throughout this election campaign, with no resolution in sight. Alice Porter, Sky News.
James Whale, the host, pushes back, suggesting that this is a fringe issue used by Wallace for self-promotion.
Me to be here.
Well, because you're not that important.
No, well, maybe that's true, James, but I'm here because I care about this subject, and that is the only reason I'm here.
But you're saying this milk is fine. You're promoting the fact that trans men should do it.
No, that is not what I'm arguing.
Well, what are you arguing?
I'm arguing about why this story is on the table.
Because it might happen, mightn't it, in the future?
Well, lots of things might happen.
Well, then we should discuss it before, so we know whether we should let it happen or not.
Yeah. But it's like the story you had on previously with Lindsay Smith. That's apocryphal. We know that she was calling trans people sexual predators on Twitter. There's that. I put that information on Twitter.
Know that.
Now, if somebody,
that's a ridiculous. Look, we're not talking about. We've already talked about that.
No,
so you want to talk about?
Let me just put this to you.
No,
can I just put this to you?
Oh,
please?
go on, Leda. And this is the last time I interview you because you are a pain in the backside, and I had to argue with me. Let her go on. I said I don't want you on the programme. My show, and I'll decide who goes on it.
Okay, James. But
and you moan like mad when you've been on it. You probably complain. You complain the whole time when you've been on because I don't agree with anything much you say. Yes, you do. You moan, and then you get in touch with the producer and say I wasn't treated.
Do you think they should
fairly.
Be allowed in the future to breastfeed babies?
Yeah, that's a good
trans.
I think people should be able to do what the hell they want with their own bodies. It's got
but the baby doesn't get a choice, does it? The baby.
So are you implying that trans women are trying to harm babies? Because if you want to,
I don't know if it might harm babies because it has.
Well, the NHS.
It's got drug. The hormone might get into the baby. You know, I mean.
Well, if I can just say what I wanted to say about this, because the reason these stories, they're not coming from nowhere, these stories, they're coming from lobby groups.
Listen, they're coming apparently from the NHS who are saying these drugs
it was always on the NHS website, James. It was always there. It was always there on the NHS website.
Ooh. So what we're really saying is that you actually think that these sort of stories, fine, whatever's going on, they don't need to be in the public eye.
No, they don't.
And I think
so. We should put it under the carpet, is what you're saying? Brush it under the carpet.
But I believe it. I believe in free speech, right? So I don't believe.
I don't think you understand what free speech is, by the way.
No, if I could, I don't believe that Lindsay Smith shouldn't stopped from going football games. I just don't think that should happen. But if you were part of a private members club, Ash, and somebody was tweeting from the river to the sea in private messages, how would you feel about that?
But this is the NHS, isn't it? This is all our service.
Forget going back to that. The NHS have said, I'll read it here, they have said they claim drug-induced milk from transgender women, who were men, is just as good as babies as women's breast milk. Well, it can't be because chest milk, sorry, is that what you have to say?
You're not allowed to call it breast milk.
I'll call it what the bloody hell I want. And the fact is that nobody knows because nobody's been on this milk and brought up. They can never really know.
What do you think the substance is that's being produced?
I've no idea.
We don't know.
From the pituitary gland in the endocrine
Well, you
system.
said there was empirical evidence. Where's that from? What evidence is it?
The evidence is based on what is observed.
But what experiments? Name the institution.
Well, Ash, I've not looked at it in that much detail, but what I would say is...
Well, why haven't you looked at it before you start moaning about it? You've come on to defend this, to actually say there's nothing wrong with it.
I've come on to talk about the fact that trans women are facing a lot of hate online. We've heard it from Brianna Jai's mother that she's trying to campaign to make social media a safer place. And these stories do not help.
Because a section of the trans community go on and on and on. That's the only reason.
And I will keep going on and on and on.
He questions the practicality and ethics of trans women breastfeeding, expressing concern over the potential health implications for the infants, particularly when the mothers are on hormone therapy.
Well, let's talk about Kelly J. Keane. She's somebody that this TV station has platformed quite a lot and quite uncritically. Because when she's on,
hang on, let Frida speak.
Yeah, because yes, but the point is, she's allowed to speak, but nobody's allowed. She's never challenged. She's allowed to speak from a.
What should she be challenged about, Frida?
She should be challenged about the message she's actually sending.
And what is the message she's sending, Frida?
Well, first of all, it's duplicitous because she's saying, let women speak, I'm standing for women, but she doesn't actually do anything for women. The whole message is about trans exclusion. She tries... I've spoken to you about this before.
And we fall out regularly. I'm trying not to do that today because, quite frankly...
No, you don't have to fall out with me. You just have to stay factual.
I'll do what I want. Thank you very much indeed, Frida. It's my show. If you want a show, get your own. Are you smoking?
I'm vaping.
Well, don't vape on the show. I don't approve of it, OK? And if you don't like that...
He accuses Wallace of sensationalising the issue to advance a particular agenda.
Now, Nigel is in the jungle, right? Being very sensible and seriously. Have a little look at this. And was faced by a woman called Nella. Never heard of her, but
Nella
apparently
Rose.
she's very famous
TikTok star.
on TikTok. I think maybe I should go onto TikTok. I scream a lot. So here's,
I scream a lot.
I like ice cream. Here's Nella and Nigel having a little chat about immigration.
But this is what I was saying to you.
Apparently you're anti-immigrants. And
Who told you that?
Oh, the internet.
Oh, well, there we are, then. It must be true. It must be true.
It must be.
It must be true.
Okay, but then why don't black people like you?
You'd be amazed they do.
Well, then,
You'd be amazed.
Nigel!
If you came with me... If you came with me, if you came with me through South London, you'd be astonished.
Oh, wow. What were you doing in South London, Nigel?
Well, I'm there every day. We cannot go on with the numbers coming to Britain that are coming. Do you know why?
I'm one of the numbers.
Oh, right. So that's it then. So should it be 5 million a year, 10 million?
Question,
No,
right?
you don't seem to understand.
Nigel, hang on.
Those immigrants that are coming in.
And since 2000, the British population has increased by 10 million. 10 million.
Yeah, we're
Good
growing.
thing. Right?
Good thing, unless you want a GP.
As far as I'm concerned, that woman needs to be dragged out of there because that's racist. In every way, shape or form, that was racist. I know Nigel quite well, very well, in fact, and have done for years and years and years.
Nigel through
Yeah, and he is not racist. He's a sensible man, which is why, if he was prepared to, I don't know, join an established political party, he could well be a prime minister.
Yeah.
And he is not anti-immigrant or anti-everything. He's sensible and serious, because what's going to happen if people like, what was her name?
Nella Rose.
No, okay. Never heard of her, but she's, quite entertaining while she's screaming and talking complete and utter rubbish.
If you don't want unlimited immigration, you're basically far right.
Yeah,
That's what you're
accused
accused of.
Just a minute.
Ridiculous.
I think that is the most disgusting thing, because if you'd said that the other way round, you would have been bleeped out and dragged out of that jungle.
Well,
I
if
think.
Nigel was a
Just
black
shut
guy,
up a minute.
I don't know how to go.
Ash.
So it is racist.
Ash. I want that woman dragged out of the jungle because she is completely racist. It's not acceptable on television in this country. The fact is, not only is she racist against Nigel or saying he's racist, but she's thick.
Yeah.
And she doesn't understand the situation. You may talk.
Do you think Anton Deck could drag her out, though? I don't think Anton Deck could drag her out.
The fact is, this just shows the woke nonsense that's going on. She's so arrogant, she's uneducated. She just thinks something she's seen on the internet makes Nigel not like black people. She was shocked that he's ever been to South London. She is so ignorant.
He lives in South East London,
and the fact is, this is what's going on with the whole silly woke brigade who don't actually understand what is real in life.
He went to Dulwich College.
Can I tell you?
Wallace stands firm, countering Wales' arguments with medical studies and expert opinions that back her position.
First of all, Mr. President, I'd like to thank you for that preview of the 2024 American election we witnessed earlier. And if you're not persuaded to vote for the proposition tonight by that speech by James, I don't know what will persuade you. You will not know this, but I was supposed to be the first non-student speaker for the proposition. I've now been the fourth, which means that I now have to thank all the previous speakers for making my best points for me. And I find that the main reason now that I have left to be in support of the motion is that I am so tired of talking about woke culture. That's why it's gone too far, more than anything else. And I thank the other speakers for making the points for me, because it means I don't have to reiterate the point that no, free speech is not some right-wing reframing of whatever. It's the foundation of Western civilization. Upon this civilization is built, and the Enlightenment values that led to it. I don't have to make the point that has been made by far better people in the past, that the only way to deal with the problem of racism is to treat people on the content of their character and nothing else. And the fact that woke culture seeks to overturn that is a new form of racism that we must all oppose. It means also I will not use this opportunity to say I told you so, as someone who spent the last 5 years warning people in the West that if we continue to erode our culture, if we continue to undermine our confidence in Western values, that our enemies Enemies like Vladimir Putin will seek to capitalize on it. I will not make any of those points tonight. At all. Instead, I am not going to talk to those of you who...
She stresses the importance of inclusivity and adapting societal norms to recognise and respect the rights of transgender individuals.
Let's return to the Olympics now, which has become engulfed in a gender row thanks to the IOC allowing a boxer to compete in the female category despite previously failing gender eligibility tests. Now, an Italian boxer called Angela Carini was forced to call it quits after just 46 seconds when fighting her opponent, because says she'd never been hit so hard in her life. Look, the whole thing is utterly ridiculous, and it's more than that. It's dangerous. And I'm joined now by former professional boxer Jeff Fenech. Jeff, thank you so very much for your time. What was your immediate reaction to watching this vision?
Yeah, it's sickening. I mean, like I said, we talk about looking after people today. We talk about domestic violence. This is a male, building on a female. It's uncalled for. It's unwanted, and the sport of boxing is in disarray. I think it's spoiling the whole Olympics. It's terrible.
Yeah, it's really interesting, Jeff, because I've done such a deep dive into this, and I've looked everywhere for information regarding this fighter. What they were born as, any kind of procedures they've had, background information. Nothing exists. I cannot find it anywhere. Is this a genetic thing, or is this a transition, or was this person born female? I can't find enough information to figure out what's going on. And you know better than anyone that boxing is not exactly renowned for its transparency, is it?
Oh, definitely not. And like I said, the sport of boxing, I mean, has always been that little shady, and this makes it even worse. This just really puts the stamp of disapproval on the sport of boxing. I mean, I had sisters. I would never beat up my sister. My sister could never beat me up. I mean, this is a male fighting a female, and this is it's scary because they could be badly injured. I mean, we're talking about in this day and age how we look after people. We're looking after concussions in rugby league and AFL. We're worried about all our sporting people, but we're letting a male...
The debate escalates as personal accusations fly.
The story that we've been covering is the growing controversy over the Algerian boxer Iman Khalif. She is through to the quarter-finals of the women's 66-kilo category after her opponent, Italy's Angela Carini, abandoned the bout in 46 seconds. She took just one punch to the face and then walked to her corner, where she was heard saying, "It's not right." The Italian boxer was in tears after the match. She told reporters it was the hardest punch she'd ever taken and that she had stopped the fight to preserve her life. Well, Khalif is one of two athletes who was cleared to compete in Paris despite being disqualified from last year's World Boxing Championships for failing to pass a gender eligibility test. Well, in the past hour, a spokesperson for the IOC has been speaking about this situation.
It's quite a serious case. There's an awful lot of abuse going on online, an awful lot of misinformed abuse going on online. And yes, we are in very close contact with the athletes and their entourages. But the IOC, I think, is always trying to do a balance between inclusivity and fairness, to put it more broadly, also safety. And that is a difficult one and something that we'll have to look at. But that's an entirely separate question to what's going on here, which is a woman boxer being stigmatised and forced out of potentially forced out of a competition. I think that's a different issue. But in general, in terms of safety of the athletes, we're never tired of saying is our #1 concern. The athletes are at the centre, so obviously we need to look after them. We need to make sure that they're safe. And there are all sorts of safeguards, particularly in the combat sports, particularly in boxing, to make sure that remains the case.
Well, the BBC has been speaking to the Culture Secretary, Lisa Nandy, about this issue as well. Here's what she had to say.
And I want to get your thoughts on the boxing match yesterday between Italy and Algeria. It's being billed as very controversial, over in 46 seconds. Angela Carini said she had to preserve her life. That's why she stopped the match. And Italian...
Wales accuses Wallace of exploiting a marginal issue for attention, while Wallace maintains her composure, reaffirming that her advocacy is rooted in equality and respect for all parents.
Let's talk to Peter. All right, you're on the air. Hello, Peter.
Hi, Pete.
Hi.
Hi. Your thoughts?
In Benidorm.
Yeah. No, just outside of Benidorm.
How lovely.
I don't think that Boris Johnson should stand again.
Why?
He's had his chance.
Yeah.
He messed up.
He didn't mess up.
With COVID. Yes, he did.
No, he didn't mess up.
Yeah.
He didn't mess up.
No, he was having parties all the time.
You're talking rubbish. If we're going to have a serious, sensible conversation, let's do it. You're talking rubbish.
Listen.
I've got to respond when you talk rubbish.
You said I could ring in and say my opinion.
I said you could ring in, and you've rung in before today. I think I heard you on another programme earlier, and you are stating your opinion, but I'm afraid I am going to suggest to you that you're talking rubbish. He would be.
No, I am not.
Well, tell me why. Tell me why.
Boris Johnson is getting a pension of 150,000.
So you're just ringing in to be jealous? Is that what you're telling me?
No.
Yeah, I think so.
I'm a bloody pensioner.
Yeah, don't swear on my programme. The only person allowed to swear on my show is me.
And he's just made.
And I'm a pensioner too. I'm a pensioner as well when I come to think about it.
What's wrong with him earning money?
But I am a pensioner as well, so don't start...
The discussion also touches on broader issues, such as gender self-identification reforms in Scotland, the use of puberty blockers and hormone therapy for transgender youth, and the need for more research on the long-term effects of these medical interventions.
But the Olympic Games officials have defended two biological men competing in women's boxing events, and you won't believe their rationale. Now, Iman Khalif from Algeria and Lin Yu Ting from Taiwan were banned from international competition after recent medical tests confirmed they had XY chromosomes. In other words, they were biological men. But the IOC has allowed them to compete in Paris as women regardless. And listen to their reasoning. This is the IOC spokesman, Mark Adams, and he told journalists, I quote, "Everyone competing in the women's category is complying with the eligibility criteria." Just stop right there for a second. That gives you a clue that something is wrong, because what he should say is everyone competing in the women's category is a woman. But no, there's an eligibility criteria. Now listen to the criteria. He says they are women in their passports, and it's stated that is the case, and they are female. So there's the IOC's argument. It says that they're women in their passports, therefore they are women. Now, we all know there's an obvious problem with that, and that is that legal documents are no longer credible for determining gender. We spoke just last night about the fact that in Queensland, for instance, you can adjust your birth certificate even without undergoing any medical procedures. If you identify as a woman and live as a woman for the specified period of time, then the birth records are adjusted to say that you are a woman. And then if anyone sort of complains that maybe you're not, you simply point to the birth records, which you yourself adjusted just 5 minutes ago. So Caleb and Liz, here's my issue with this. If I were to go to the IOC, crude example, but go with me for a second, and I wanted to buy...
Both sides remain steadfast in their beliefs, leaving the debate unresolved.